So I did a video yesterday where I talked about potential involvement of organized crime at UFC Mexico City. And then that's actually two incidents from the UFC Mexico City. One is a decision on the preliminary card that was so egregious that there is no other way for me to look at it that is not that. I don't know how else you could look at it when a guy at the end of the fight is a minus 2,100 favorite to get the decision, which means that you would have to bet $2,100 on him to win 100. That's how big of a favorite he was to win the decision, and he lost. It made no sense, okay? And so there was that. And then there's also some stuff about that huge brawl that happened on the floor that I think is highly likely to be some really heavy, serious cartel people down there. So I did a whole video about that. But then as I was getting ready to release it, I'm just playing on YouTube, and I found this video right here where Joe Rogan is talking about the UFC gambling scandal. And there's so much context in what Joe Rogan says that applies directly to what I say in the following part of this video where I discuss potential organized crime involvement in the UFC Mexico. So I wanted to play this really quick and then let you guys watch the rest of the video that I did yesterday, but this is such great context because these are known issues that happened with the UFC betting scandal. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to watch that, and then you can watch the rest of it when I talk about the cartels, potential involvement down there.
The UFC betting scandal?
No, sir, I'm not.
So the UFC, there didn't used to be rules in terms of I could bet if I wanted to. Anybody could bet on fights. And what was going on was there was one trainer, and the allegations were that this trainer was involved in an online betting group, and he was letting these people in this online betting group know that one of the people that he was involved with was injured. And pretty significant injury. This guy winds up going out and fighting, loses in the first round, hurts his knee, throws a kick, blows his knee out. Apparently his knee was already hurt. Then they find out that this guy had been doing this for quite a while, or allegedly had been doing this for quite a while. And so then they pass this law now, or pass a rule with the UFC that no one can gamble. But I would imagine that fighting is probably the most difficult thing to get right. The thing that would give me pause is scoring. Judges' scoring is horrible. It's the worst part of the sport. It's so bad. It's so bad that maybe 10 to 20% of fights, you'll have one card that's so off. You're like, what the fuck was that guy watching? It happens all the time where as commentators, we're just scratching our head. Like, how did he give it to the other guy? In what world? And I will go back and watch it again and see if I'm being biased. I'll watch it with the sound off. I'll just analyze all the positions and all the things that's happening and damage done and control the octagon and pushing the pace. I'll look at the volume. I'll look at the amount of strikes landed. And then I'll be like, how? How did that guy see it for the other person? It doesn't make any sense. And I always wonder if someone's on the take. I always wonder. Because I know that there was a case in Vegas where there was a woman who had given out very questionable decisions, like multiple questionable decisions. And the last one was so egregious that she kind of just went away. But I've always wondered if those people were on the take. Because Don King famously was a sneaky dude and did a lot of very under-the-radar shit that was probably not good. And I would think that if you have a fighter and that fighter's working for you, you would definitely have relationships at the very least with these judges. So they would be more inclined to score for you. Maybe you take them on a vacation. Maybe you take them to dinner. Maybe you do whatever you can do to get inside their good graces. And then if it's like, this guy or this guy, I'm going to go with this guy because I like Don King.
Now, I'm going to be honest, I have nothing to add to that. I wanted you guys to have that context, put it in the back of your brain, and now watch what I said about the cartel's potential involvement or organized crime involvement in Mexico City's UFC. Now, sponsorships is one of the ways that I was able to go full-time and get you guys as much content as possible. So today we've got an external sponsor. I'm going to ask you guys to give that a look right now, and then we are going to rock and roll. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, and like this video and enjoy the cartel portion of this video. All right, so I'm excited to tell you guys about the sponsor of this video, Blinkist. I am a person who likes to be able to say I read books when the reality is that I want the information, but I don't really have time to be reading books. Now with Blinkist, you can get all of the stories from these books in like 10 to 12 minutes. Like, I probably won't read Hood Feminism, but I might read Lives of the Stoics, and I definitely might read Perfectly Confident or any of these other ones. They have 6,500 nonfiction titles,
and you get basically the Cliff's Notes. Gone Girl, that is literally one of my favorite books and movies ever, and they give it to you in 9 minutes. Think about how much better of a person you could become in one day if you blocked off like 3 hours and did all the self-help books in the world.
Now, the spaces portion is the coolest. You can create a space, you can add different books to your space, and then you can share them with your friends so you guys can all talk about them together.
It's like an online book club, except a cool one with your friends where you're all getting a lot of benefit from it. Now, because you're hearing about Blinkist today on my channel, you get a 7-day free trial and 25% off Blinkist annual premium by using my promo link that's in the description. So check the link in the description today. Go check out Blinkist and you can get yourself moving in the right direction.
So one stereotype that you hear about Mexico all the time is that you can't step foot anywhere in that country without running into cartel, which I obviously know is not accurate. I've had people tell us that they won't go on vacation with us to Cabo San Lucas or Cancun because they're too concerned about the cartel violence. And you're like, dude, I'm telling you, we go there 3 times a year. That's like, you don't need to worry about that. We're going to an all-inclusive resort. It's ridiculous. That said, when you have an event like the UFC in Mexico City, if you think that cartel people are not going to be going to that fight, you're out of your mind, okay? This is UFC, man. This is combat sports, okay? Combat sports, a big show like this, Mexico City, you're going to get some people who are successful criminals in Mexico. And the floor seats are a good place to look for where those people might be, right? Now, why do I bring this up? I bring this up because there was this huge fight at the UFC event that Dana's going to describe to you guys right now. And the reaction from the security, which is a non-reaction. I want to talk about that actually. But here, I'm going to have Dana tell you about it. And after that, I'm going to show you a decision that went the wrong way that I think may or may not have had cartel involvement. And it was that egregious of a decision, and I'll tell you what I'm talking about there in a second. But first, let's go ahead and watch this clip of Dana, and we'll talk about this fight.
It happened here in Mexico City. The crazy thing about that fight, when that fight broke out, it felt like it kept going forever. So I ran over there and I was watching it. Nobody stopped it. I mean, I was waiting for security to come in. They just let them go till it was over. That's one of the craziest things I've ever seen. I don't think it's a bad look for the UFC. It happened, and that was the end of that. I think after everybody else saw that shit, nobody else wanted to try that again. No security. The fight just went on until the fight was over. I've never seen any shit like that in my life.
Now, I'd love to show you guys this entire fight video. Obviously, I would love to show you street fight videos all the time. But you can't show them on YouTube without getting demonetized and deranked. Like, YouTube's algorithm instantly catches street fight stuff. It's crazy. They're like, it's unbelievable how accurate it is. But anyway, like what you're looking at right here, and why we're going to talk about cartel stuff in a second is I will explain. But this guy right here who has his arm out and he has his, one of his sleeves has been ripped off. That guy's about to get starched. Now, assuming that you have not subscribed to my channel yet and you watch my content, I'll make you a deal. If anyone ever takes a swing at you at a UFC event and you are a subscriber of my channel, I will jump over the barrier and I will tackle the guy and make sure you don't get starched. And I'll be like, listen, man, he's one of my subscribers. They'll be all, whoa. All right. I'll beat you up instead. Anyway, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, and all of you guys like this video. Okay, so he's fighting some guys, and I have nothing negative to say about anybody's performance in this fight. I think all of them looked very violently capable. I wouldn't want to fight any of them because they all look like they totally know what they're doing. But one guy definitely who knew what he was doing is the guy who starched that dude's friend who has his sleeve off, and then rolled and absolutely nuclearized the guy with his sleeve ripped off. And when he did it, the entire crowd went bananas, dude. Like, they literally lost it. Like as if someone had just knocked someone out cold in the middle of the, actual fight. It was hilarious. And I don't think the guy realized it either, because he starched the guy and the crowd went wild and he didn't react to it at all. Like, I think he thought that they were still yelling for the fight that was in the octagon because they were like announcing a decision. But so they were definitely yelling for him though, because you could see the people behind him cheering. It's on my Instagram story actually. Go follow me on Instagram. It's in my Instagram story. But anyway, so here is why we are talking about this related to cartel, right? So did you hear what Dana said? Like, he said that no security jumped in, right? Like, have you guys ever been to a UFC event? One thing that's really weird, I should have actually started that clip a little bit earlier. But what the guy said was there was a huge fight in the crowd. Do you think that reflects poorly on the UFC? And Dana's like, reflects poorly on the UFC. And the guy's like, yeah. And he's like, hey man, we have these events all the time. That kind of thing never happens. And then he says, but this one was crazy. Like, it started and like no security came. It just like fought until the fight was over. And you heard him, no security got involved. I've never seen that before. And I was thinking, and as soon as he said that, I was like, I wonder why. You know what I mean? Why would security not get involved in a fight like that? Now, is it possible that something about being in Mexico changed the UFC protocol for security? Because they bring their own security, Like, you'll always see the guy with the beard that is, you'll always see him. He's like the head of security. Me and Gabrielle hung out with him when they were at UFC Austin. We went out after that event with him. But like, yeah, they bring their own security. Why would they not go break up a fight, And so I thought about that, and then I thought, well, it is the floor seats at a UFC event in Mexico City, and from what I've heard through documentaries and such, the cartel, generally speaking, is not very forgiving when it comes to things like that. Like, if you grab the wrong person and they turn around and see your face, or like, you push someone a little bit too hard and they turn around and see your face, or whatever, any reason to get on their radar while they're in a heated exchange, So do I know that these guys are cartel? Of course not. I have absolutely no idea. But just in, just to make sure that I'm not putting myself in harm's way, I wouldn't say that any of them don't, I definitely wouldn't say that the guy without the sleeves who got starched, I'm not even going to make that joke, actually. I'm actually not even going to make that fucking joke, because I've watched documentaries about people talking shit about cartel guys online and then they get smoked. I'm good on that, dude. Do I know they're cartel? No. But it would explain why the security did not get involved if they were, because I've never seen that either, Security just lets the people fight it all the way out at a UFC event. That's never happens. Now, the reason why I brought up what Dana said about it not happening at UFC events, that's not exactly accurate. It was accurate if he meant that kind of fight never happens at UFC, and that would be because security always jumps in. But to say that there are never fights at UFC events is just not accurate. I go to lots of events, man. I would say there's a fight at like 1 out of 3. Something like 1 out of 3, probably, maybe 1 out of 2. If I'm like, might be 1 out of 2, but they're like fast, they don't turn into this. I've never seen a fight like that at a UFC event ever with this many people. Never. They're usually fast, and they're in the crowd, and then everybody looks over there and they're, oh, what's going on? By the time you could pull your phone out, it's already over and security's dragging people out. But I've seen that plenty of times. The UFC San Antonio, definitely. That one I remember vividly because I was there with my, what was Giselle, 11 or 10 or 11-year-old daughter, And I was like that at the time, because she's a jiu-jitsu, she's a jiu-jitsu competitor. I'm like, yeah, this will inspire her for her jiu-jitsu career. And she'll be with me, whatever. On the way in, everything was cool. We were sitting down, everything was cool. Then people started getting drunk and people were kind of yapping. People were trying to talk to her. And I was like, this might not have been the best idea. And then there was a fight, and I was like, oh my God, man. One of my buddies from my jiu-jitsu team, found, we were texting or whatever, and I told him what section we were in. And so he came to our section, and me and Giselle were in the front row of one of the upper sections. And so he came, so I'm like, here, Giselle, stay right here. I'm just going to go say what's up to, my friend here. So I got up, and I'm, she's watching. I'm 6 feet behind her. I just went out of the row, and I'm talking to my buddy right here. I'm looking right at her. There's, I'm there for all intents and purposes. But the dude who was sitting right behind us thought I had left. And I'm 3 feet behind him, but he thinks I'm gone. He's wasted. And he goes, comes down and taps her shoulder and started asking her something. My fucking 10 or 11-year-old daughter. And she kind of turned and said something to him. And I said to him, I'm like, what the fuck is this guy doing, dude? What the fuck is this guy doing? Because he's wasted. And he's, talking to my fucking 10 or 11-year-old daughter that he thinks is alone. And, you know, I went, you know, pretty soon after that, like I was watching the whole time. He was trying to talk to her and I went and I'm like, what did that guy say to you? And she said, oh, he just asked me who my favorite fighter is. I'm like, I mean, you know, maybe like, you know, but bottom line is not a good place for a 10 or 11-year-old girl. I think that I had jumped the gun on that, but that is a tangent that is totally irrelevant, but nonetheless, yeah, but yeah, there's fights all the time. But again, security always 100% of the time goes in and breaks them up very quickly. So my theory is that maybe they were concerned about grabbing the wrong person. Okay, that's it. Now, and again, floor seats in Mexico City, those are pricey. Speaking of pricey seats, dude, we're going to UFC 300, dog. We are, so we got our tickets. Everything's booked. Gabrielle and I are going to be in the front row of section 19. So that is where we're going to be. If anybody wants to come hang out, you know, it's like, it's one of those things where like you tell people exactly where you're going to be. And it's like, dude, are you sure you want to do that? There might be crazies. I'm like, crazies can't afford to go to section 19 of UFC 300. Only people that could be there are cool. Like, you know what I mean? They're just people like us. So it'd be like, hey, what's up, man? Love your show. It's like, what's up, dude? You know, people who are, you know, in the basement making 150 accounts, they can't afford to go to that section. So, you know, I don't feel super worried about it. Anyway, so come say what's up if you guys are at 300. What am I talking about again? That's right, cartel. All right, so now moving over to the other part of what I was going to say, which is the decision that was fucking egregious, dude. Now, I don't know who was watching the fights as early as this one, but this was like the second prelim fight. I was watching it, obviously, but I was watching it with the sound off, and that's relevant in a second. But I'm talking about the Victor Altamirano. Jeez, man, that is hard. Jesse, if you're ever going to be an ESPN commentator, you're really going to have to learn how to pronounce people's last names. I know. But right now, I am bad at it. Anyway, so Victor lost to Felipe Dos Santos. And I was watching with the sound off because Gabrielle and I were at a resort. And we were, I think right during that fight, we were down at the pool. And so I was watching with the sound off because I didn't want to bother everybody at the pool. So I watched the entire fight. I saw the entire thing. When they called Felipe as the winner, I literally rewound it like a minute and a half and then turned up the sound because I'm like, did they read the name wrong? That's impossible that they gave that fight to him. So what I found out when I rewound it was that the live odds makers, actually, you know what? Let me, before I even tell you what the numbers were, so the live odds are constantly being updated by the sports books. Okay. So you can basically, there are lots of sports books where you can bet on who's going to win midway through the fight, and the odds change as the fight develops. Right. So if you know how to read odds, actually, again, a really quick remedial course. So if someone is plus, like if it says plus and a number, that means they're the underdog. And what that means, so like, let's say it's someone's plus 175. Okay. What that means is if you bet $100 on that person, you will win 175. So you'll get 275 back. If it's a 125, they're plus 125. That means that you will win $125 for every 100 that you bet. If it's minus, that person's the favorite. Okay. Which means if someone is a minus 200 favorite, you need to bet $200 in order to win $100. Okay. That's how the odds work. And so at the end of the fight, Victor was a minus 2,100 favorite. Okay. I want you to hear what I'm saying. Now that you understand the odds, as me, assuming you didn't already, minus 2,100 means you would have had to bet $2,100 on Victor to win in order to win 100 in the event that he was announced the winner. So there's no question who won that fight betting line, period. Like that's like, yeah, there's no question. It's a 21-1 favorite. Okay. And so they announced the other guy. I've never seen that before. I've never seen a decision that egregious where the live odds were that bad. So immediately I am like, there's no way you could even misinterpret that fight as far as I'm concerned. Now, I will say before I get into the part where I float the idea that this was corruption, that I saw some on mixed martial MM academic, MMA Academic. Great documentary channel. He's the one that does the MMA UFC Iceberg, MMA Icebergs. He actually put me on the last one. It's like Jesse on Fire reality TV star. And he showed like that I'd been on reality TV a couple times, and it was a pretty funny segment. I emailed him about it after, but nonetheless, so on his channel, he said something about judging where he explained the way he explained it had to do with what this judge had said about how they're able to judge what they're looking at. I thought what I heard on that video, if accurate, does explain a lot of the bad judging, but I'm not 100% sure that's accurate. What he said was that the judges do not get a monitor. They have to just sit there and watch from where they're sitting through the cage, and they don't get to look at the monitor. They don't get to do anything else. I have no idea if that's true. That doesn't sound accurate. I could have sworn that I've seen judges looking down, and you're like, why are they looking? Like, how is a judge going to judge? And it was like, oh, they're looking at the monitor. Now that makes perfect sense to me because I know, having been to a bunch of events, you can see better on the TV than you can from any seat in the house. So, I mean, if you're looking for surgical accuracy on what's going on, if they're on the ground on the other side of the cage, how are you going to see any kind of like, I mean, think about it. If you know any kind of grappling stuff, like guys on the ground and you're across the other side, like you're on the other side, if some guy attacks an arm from underneath, how are you possibly going to be able to see that stuff? How are you going to be able to see if a guy throws an elbow and whether it lands or not? Like I hope that's not true because that would be so stupid. Think about that, dude. If you're watching from behind, like let's say a guy who fights like Khabib is in the guard, is in someone's guard, and he's trying to throw elbows down. Okay, well, how on earth would you be able to tell if the elbow lands? You know what I mean? Like if a guy's in the guard, he throws an elbow, and the dude slips it, and the guy's elbow smashes into the canvas, and then he throws 7 more of those. Is that equivalent to if he's threw 7 in a row directly into the guy's nose? So, like, if they don't have monitors, that just makes no sense. Hopefully, that was an incorrect report, but if it's not, then that does explain things. Nonetheless, that would not have made a difference in this fight. It was no question who won. So my thought immediately was, where are they again? It's like, oh, they're in Mexico? It's like, oh, weird. Because I do remember a few incidents having to do with corruption related to betting on soccer, Is it a stretch of the imagination to think that maybe someone with some serious juice made a big boy bet on that fight and then took precautions to make sure that bet went the direction that they wanted? So Chris, if you guys don't know who this is Chris Brennan. He's a very successful MMA coach. He was a UFC title contender. You think he fought for the title once or twice, and his son is undefeated in Bellator. He's a fucking badass. I ask him questions all the time. He's been a jiu-jitsu black belt for like 100 years. And I mean that as a compliment. Well, actually, let me see when. So, yeah, he gets his coral belt in 7 years. That is so badass, dude. So he just got his final stripe on his black belt. That is so impressive, dude. Anyway, so Chris made a post about this. And I commented like, dude, if there's a fight where you might think that maybe the fix is in, this seems like a pretty strong, option, just given where it is and how egregious that was. And he's like, you would think that they would, if it was a fix, it would go in the direction of the local fighter because it went against the Mexican fighter, which is certainly, fair. Like that's fair. And like in the Colombia soccer betting thing where they killed that guy who got the own goal against the USA, it was because they all bet on Colombia. But in this case, if it was some kind of setup or corruption or whatever, my hypothesis would be that someone knew something about the Mexican fighter, whether they were nursing an injury or any other thing, right? And so the person bets against that person. So like it makes sense that the local fighter could be the one they bet against because they could know something that would make them think that he's compromised going into the fight or some other thing. And then they bet so much they're like, well, I don't like taking chances. And if you're that judge, and you might not even have to get paid, it might just be someone tells you, it's like, hey, that this dude bet on the other guy, right? Like, this dude's got a lot of dough on that guy. I'm just saying, because those guys down there are fucking scary, dude. super fucking scary. It's, people act like, it's like people go into the two extremes whenever you talk about things like this. When you're talking about like cartels in Mexico, as an example, usually you either have hysterical lunatics who think that if you like step foot in Mexico, that you're going to step on a landmine that the cartel put down for a tourist to like walk into, or they act like it's like a non-existent issue. They're like, oh God, oh yeah, it's because what, the cartels run everything. And you're like, okay, guys, it's in between those two things. Okay. Like there are lots of places that are safe in Mexico for you to go. But if you think that this is some kind of myth, that there is a absolutely ridiculous amount of cartel influence because of the amount of money that they throw around, the corruption all throughout all different types of, organizing their society, you're out of your mind. It's 100% legit. Everybody knows that. Not to mention, everybody knows what the repercussions are if you end up on the wrong side of those guys, which if you don't know that, there's no reason you would need to worry about rubbing up against them if you're not a person with a big, public profile or in that business. And if you're in that business, I would assume you already know. But yeah, these guys are the last people on planet Earth you would ever want to be on the wrong side of. There are guys who went on social media, like they were like these like kind of like influencer clout chaser guys that in Mexico, they did a, like one of them just like for like the way that, I don't know, I'm trying to think of who would be like equivalent to this kid. I don't know, like one of these influencers, one of the guys that Strickland's talking about, they're like do anything for attention, but it was like the Mexican version. This kid used to get blacked out drunk. I can't remember the kid's name. He was a huge influencer though. And he just get blacked out drunk and he would say all kinds of crazy stuff. This kid's like 16 years old. And he went on there and he said, fuck, I'm not even want to say the guy's fucking name. This guy, like okay. As I understand it, the scariest fucking cartel guy on earth is this dude, El Mencho. And he said, he said it about that guy. And he said it on his channel. Like he was like, fuck that guy, dirt. And everyone's all, dude, are you crazy? Are you crazy? And some people are like, oh, come on. He's whatever. He's fucking dead, man. They smoked that kid. They fucking smoked that kid. Went to a club where he had storied himself. Here I am at blah, blah, blah. And they machine gunned him, dude. Because he's an idiot teenager who said that on the internet. You know what I mean? Like, these guys don't fuck around, dude. So if you were a judge and someone said, we'd like it if it went that way, you're like, well, geez, which repercussions sound less impactful? Cartel guy or these guys? Again, I have no idea if that's actually what happened with the scorecard, but it being in Mexico and it being probably one of the worst, most egregious decisions I've ever seen, maybe. Anyway, so that's what I got on that part. So he got completely fucked, and I hope he still got his bonus.